Welcome to the Live to Lift Up podcast. And today it is my absolute honor and privilege to welcome with us Dr. Shirley Zinn. Dr. Shirley Zinn and mom, Sandy Mahanathan, go back a very long time. And what started out as a professional journey fast translated and became a deeply personal and connected one, filled with travels, filled with memories, filled with love, but more importantly, speaks true to the LiftUp acronym. Hi there, my name is Danielle Mahanathan, your host of this podcast. Why have we named this podcast LiftUp? Because each letter is something profoundly deep and meaningful to not just the words and the lessons that Sandy Mahanathan lived by, but her actions, a life of consistency. The L stands for love, the I for inspire growth, the F is for foster growth and harmony. The T is for together, because together is only where we are able to lift and rise. The U is for universal, because mom was a universal global citizen. And the P is for passion, because what is life without living with absolute passion? And I'm so grateful to introduce Dr. Shirley Zinn, because if anything, Dr. Shirley Zinn lives with 110% passion. Welcome, Dr. Shirley Zinn. It is such an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for the very warm and gracious welcome. I loved your mother dearly. I miss her every day, and I'm truly honored that I can share this conversation with you, her beautiful daughter, in memory of a fellow traveler, a sister, and just the joy and love that we shared both personally and professionally.
Wonderful. You've hit me in my heart already. I've felt that so deeply. And what I think I would like to please start off with is if you could share with us and our audience today, Shirley, how did you meet mom? Where, when, how? Please retell and relive vicariously for all of us how that engagement began.
Thank you so much. I tried to go back to the exact moment, and I can't remember the actual date and time and place, but I do remember meeting Sandy in HR professional environments, and it was just a incredible energy and connect and magic that happened whenever we got together. And it was sort of a peer to peer before a sister to sister type of dynamic. And as I said to Danielle, in preparation for this, I just hit Sandy Mahanathan on my email trail here, and it takes me all the way back to 2014. So we are talking at least 12 years ago of email communication. Although I think that we come along a long way before that. I think I met her at the Institute of People Management for the first time at one of the conferences back then, and we have almost been in correspondence daily since then on all sorts of things, including doing walks and adventures. I remember in September 2016 it was Tsutikama hike from Mazeppa Bay to Coffee Bay, I think it was, and Beacon Isle. The four of us, Sandy, Claude, and Kevin and myself, did that incredible walk. But I think if I have to go back to the starting point, we moved from Cape Town to Pretoria in 1998. I landed a job there, and I think Sandy must have been at Accenture during that time. And I think that's when I first came across Sandy, and she had already kind of risen within a organization to great leadership heights through very difficult, um, um, barriers and obstacles that most women face as they try to lead in large organizations of this kind. And she had, deep admiration by all her colleagues, um, deep respect, and she was an HR professional of absolute note. And I was learning to become a better HR professional because, bearing in mind, all my qualifications are in education, all my experience up to that point was in education, and I was trying to evolve into an HR professional, and I wanted to be like Sandy.
That's quite something to share, right? And the reason I say this is, Shadi, I would love for you to please share with our audience who you are, a bit about yourself, because that last statement you've just made, that you wanted to be like her, is quite something because of who you are and what you have achieved and what you do. So if you could please share with the audience a bit about yourself, just so they have a bit of context around who Dr. Shirley Zinn is, how you have come to be where you are.
So just picking up on my last point, I think, Sandy was such an inspiration for me. She was a, she fostered my growth in HR and the many things we finally got to do together. When I look back, I have to say deep gratitude to you, Sandy, for the time you took with me, for the joys and the challenges that we faced together, and for being a very smart person with a very strong heart. Um, and I am going back now to my early days before I moved to Johannesburg, Pretoria, Danielle. I grew up here in the Cape Flats, Cape Town, and it was, I have a younger sister that's 3 years younger than I am, and it was a very, very difficult place to be. It still is, maybe even harder today. And my mom and dad, although they didn't finish their high school, they were very clear with us that education would be our liberation and that we needed to continue to learn, regardless of the barriers and the challenges out there. And I eventually asked my dad, so what do you think you would like me to do? He said to me, just, will you get your matric? Will you and your sister get your matric? That's all I'm asking you to do. And whatever you want to do after that, that's really your choice. And I could look around me. I didn't see anybody going to school. There were a few of them that came to school, but didn't get to matric, especially young girls. And I wondered how on earth I was going to do that. Um, my mother was very much more on the value side of things. She didn't use fancy words like values, but she talked about respect and she talked about humility and hard work and excellence and kindness and generosity to other human beings and service to humanity and um, and also taking care of your relationships with people, nurturing your relationships, especially of people who uplift and inspire you and challenge you to be a little bit better than you are now. And those messages resonated with me my whole life. Even now, everything I do, every um, relationship I have is driven by a sense of purpose around humanity and putting people first and prioritizing that in my professional life as well. And so I went up and I got my matric. Just so that you know, I was born in 1961. Which makes me almost 65, Danielle. And I have to say that only to give context that we were in the middle of apartheid at the time. We were living on the periphery of society. We had been pushed geographically right out of the center, where my father and his family were displaced out of District 6, and I'm using a nice word to describe it. But the hopes and dreams of a young person in a context like that is incredibly limited, just because there is so much unemployment, poverty, little hope, so much despair. It was a terrible set of circumstances to be in. And today I often go back to the place where we grew up. I go into the schools, I go into the communities to share the story and to show, that if I could have walked this journey, I can try and plant a little seed where you can also feel like you can do that. And it's very, very, very tough out there still. And today we, celebrate the enormous talent that, emerges from almost the ashes of society in a sense. And if we give them half a chance, they can shine. And I also know that Sandy came from a very similar kind of background. And when we shared our stories and the difficulties also that she faced along the way, and that there's no magic, you know, recipe for how one works one's way through it. But the thing for me was I grasped onto the thing about education. And when I got to the end of my high school, when I was finding matric and I was very daunted and nervous about the future, these two teachers, Mr. Najan, Mr. Isaacs, they sat me down and they said to me, you know something? You're not the brightest in the pod. You're not shooting out the lights in terms of your academics. We know you're working hard, but you have potential to do so much more than you think is possible. So I was sort of blown away. I was like, wow, there are people that believe in me. And I was like, what do you want me to do? And they said, go home and talk about university to your parents tonight, because tomorrow we're filling in forms for you to apply for universities. And I was kind of, wow, okay. And off I went, and I knew it was going to be tough because we didn't have money. And that was exactly the story. We don't have money, we don't have time. You need to augment the family's financial circumstances. So you're going to get a weekend job and you're going to try to get your bursary and you definitely have to pass. These were some of the comments the night before, but we'll support you, we'll put it over your head, but you have to pull your piece off. And so I was into many side hustles always throughout my life to make sure that I gave back my piece to my family and my community, and acknowledged that the support and love and care that they gave to me at that time. And so I got into the University of the Western Cape in 1980. It was a very difficult year. I majored in English, Latin, and sociology, and I ticked off the box to be a teacher. That was my very first job. That's the only way I could get a bursary, and at the time, and then I did the postgraduate diploma in higher education, and I went to teach for 4 years. So that's my first job. I taught English for 4 years at a high school here in Lansdowne in Cape Town. And there are lots of stories in the story, Danielle, but I know I must fast forward. And all of this, by the way, is documented in my first book called Swimming Upstream, which documents my personal and professional life. It was published 10 years ago, and it's still available. And so there are a lot more details in there. But it was a very difficult year. As I said, there was a national student uprising during that time. And I started to link the dots between apartheid, between my socioeconomic circumstances and how important education was in all of that. And in that, I realized I've got to continue to study. So I went to teach. I did my honors through UNISA in education. I then landed a job at the University of the Western Cape as a lecturer. Um, and I continued with my studies. I did a master's in education then. And while I was doing that, I met Kevin in 1994, 1988 actually. So I met Kevin at UWC, and life changed for me forever since then. So as you know, we're going to be married for 34, 35 years this year. Better get that number right. It was 92 we got married. Um, and I'll be in big trouble if I don't get that right. And then his mom clipped out a thing to say Harvard South Africa Fellowship now open for application. And I have to tell you that today it is open for application right now as we speak. I think it closes off somewhere in March. So if somebody's listening now, you can go and Google it and find it. And they send 5 people every year, but you got to get through the academic hoops. And I was chosen to go. And as soon as I finished my first master's at UWC, I was very fortunate I could go into a second master's at Harvard. And then I had an amazing supervisor, and he said to me, you must do the doctorate. And I said, Prof. Willie, where will I get the money to do that? And he said, first get in. It's a global competition. And then I applied, I got in, I came back here, Kevin and I got married, and I took him with me. So I started the doctorate in 93, finished in 97, had Jamie, our beautiful baby, um, in 1995, smack bang in the middle of all of that. And we brought a baby home and we brought the doctorate home. And so that was the beginning of a new step in my career. I wanted to work in the Western Cape Education Department, but I didn't find a job there. So I went into corporate. I became a training manager at Southern Life, which was one door closing and a much bigger door opening for me. It was an incredible start to a career in human resource management and an opportunity to meet iconic leaders in HR like Sandy Mahanathan that I have huge respect for. And we moved to Pretoria after that. And my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, Kevin, Jamie, everybody moved north. It's a thing that Capetonians don't often do, but we did that. And a leap of faith, taking a little bit of a risk, getting out of my comfort zone and moving up there and meeting incredible people that I would never ever have met in my life. And just having my career just open to me. And then, I got into head of HR roles. I was at Rickett Benkiser, I was at SARS, I was Nedbank, Standard Bank in the time that I was there. And Sandy and I were very active in the Institute for People Management and other related HR professional bodies. And our ability to mentor and coach young HR professionals as well was such a joy to be able to do all of that with her. So yeah, that brings me back to the present now, Danielle, where I'm now serving on a few boards, listed boards, private boards, foundations, trusts, academic advisory. But that also came with a lot of challenge and difficulty. In 2003, we were involved in a terrible car accident, going back to Johannesburg from Cape Town, and we lost Jamie. We lost our only son in that car accident. He was 7 years old at the time. He would be about 31 now in May if he was around. And my sense of purpose was completely um, clarified to me in that time of healing. Um, and my sense of purpose has become, very sharpened around really leaving a better place for as many people as I possibly can in my journey through my life now, unleashing human potential and celebrating the human spirit and what is capable, even when times get very, very tough. It was a devastating blow for us and our family to lose this beautiful, beautiful son that we were gifted for 7 years with. And I live vicariously through my friends and their families and their children. But our children are a gift to us. And I know you and Brecht were gifts to your mom and your dad. And they celebrated you so often. They were so proud of you. And I'm honored to have met you while, on the visits to your home and our other little gatherings that we used to have. And I'm truly honored that that brings me to today. Because today we celebrate a beautiful life of your mom, Sandy, and I couldn't do this in any other way. And you've given me a platform to not only speak about our relationship, but celebrate the human being that we loved and got so much joy from.
That is such a beautiful recount of not only your life, not just the massive accolades and achievements that you have earned along the way, Shirley, but how what happened with your boy was a turning point for how you further deepened and defined your purpose and your place here. And that is not easy. I can't imagine that pain ever goes away. I can't imagine that there's not a day that goes by where you're saying, even now, he would have been 31, where we lose these deeply profound human beings in our lives for them to go onto their soul journey. It leaves a mark. And I listened to, it was either a podcast by Stephen Bartlett or Jay Shetty, and they shared that the concept of grief is one that it's like a stone in your pocket and it's always there, but it gets lighter with time. And there's also the analogy of it's a ball in a box and this ball is bouncing around. But as time goes, the box gets bigger and bigger and the impact is less and less, or you feel it less frequently, but you still feel it. And in sharing this, I know in some of the conversations that I've had with you over time, or in your one, I think one of in your next book with Dr. Augusta Dorning on the power of visualization, is it speaks of how pain and joy can coexist. It can live together. And what you shared so freely about Jamie and how you turn that into further purpose and a driving force, as well as what you shared about mom in terms of the love and the connection and the inspiration. Um, I think what I'd like to get from you is how did you do that? I mean, and there's a reason I ask that. What is the help that you sought? What are the outlets? What are the people? You said you had a circle and a team of friends and family that you have always been able to lean into. But what do you feel was your secret sauce to being able to pick yourself up, to keep going and to channel that? Because there are a lot of people, and you've said it so accurately. With mom, she touched multiple lives globally. That universal expansion and connection is so profound. And um, how were you able to pick yourself up in your deepest, darkest moments of grief and pain? Because there are a lot of people that are struggling with the loss of mom. So what would your pearls of wisdom and your heartfelt guidance be for those listening? For how did you do it? To lose a child at such a young age and for what I can't imagine was nothing short of traumatic. How did you do it, Shirley?
Thank you, Janelle. Um, so the first thing I must say that we can never get over it. We can never get over the loss of a Jamie or a mom. Um, but what we can do is we can put one foot in front of the other every single day. And what I had to learn was that despite all my studies in psychology, that when we need help, we need to be able to ask for help. That's the first leap of faith. We need to be able to seek out help intentionally because the devastation won't just evaporate. It won't go away if you busy yourself with work and pretend that your heart is not shattered. And your soul is not broken, because that's what happens when you're deep in the hole of grief. It's dark and it's lonely and it's incredibly sad and broken. And the longer you stay there, the worse it becomes to lift yourself up. And I realized that I made many mistakes in my grieving process because I thought that I could somehow, um, rise above the grief and the devastation with just carrying on with work and keeping myself busy. And I'd been put off for 6 months um, by a medical professional or a set of medical professionals, not only for my the damage done to physiologically to me, but the damage done emotionally and psychologically. It was much more than what happened to my actual the wounds on my body that you could physically see. Um, the depth of the pain was profound, and what I thought I would do is on the second month, I was working at records. I was responsible for Africa, Middle East. The head office, the regional office had moved to Dubai out of Johannesburg. So I was flying to Dubai every once a month for exco meetings and other meetings there. And one night I was lying in the hotel with a picture, looking at a picture of Jamie and feeling a horrific sense of grief and loneliness. And I'd left my family in Johannesburg again for a few more days, and a deep reflective moment just, overcame me. And I was guided by a message that said, you need to spend more time with your family. You need to go home and find help and recover from this before you try to do anything more. And I have to tell you that Records was incredibly compassionate organization. They were so empathetic. They gave me all that time off. They granted me the time off. They said, please do not come back to work before your 6 months are over. We will find someone else to sit in your chair and do your work. And I was listening to that. And I had to find within myself the ability to harness all my intellectual capability, all my cognitive ability, my ability to think about what was happening to me, my ability to feel what was happening to me, feel it deep down in my soul and not try to brush it away. And then I had to use all my emotional intelligence that I had been talking about to so many people over so many years, how important emotional quotient is. And I had to apply that to myself. And I had to say to myself, where are you in terms of your emotional intelligence today? Where are you? You know? And what are you doing to harness that? Um, so to combine that with your intellectual capability, you know grief cycles, you studied many of them. And you are now in a grief cycle of your own, right? And now you need this emotional capability to lift yourself up. But you also need your social capability, your relationships with other people that care and love you, that see you walking around with a broken heart every day, and who have absolutely no idea anymore of what to do to console you. Um, and then and then there's the spiritual anchors, whatever that might mean in anybody's life. You all define those things differently. But it is the combination of those four things, along with understanding that you need to get professional help. I understood that many months only after the event. Kevin and I agreed that we would go for sessions together. Then we did a few sessions with a medical, properly qualified professional. Then we went for individual sessions. And then I got to the point where I said, okay, now, Shirley, you have to pull yourself up from, by your own bootstraps. Combine all of these things that you have done, and with the love and the care of everybody around you, you will lift yourself up out of this. And so this is what I did. And I took the first really step of trepidation to say, I'm going to, this is how I'm going to reframe, reset my life. This is the gift that Jamie has given to me of the 7 years that I've had, that I was very fortunate to have with him. Um, I was 24 hours touch and go. I'm still here. Kevin is still here. All the people around me that love and care for me, including your mother, who was one of the first responders, was there for us. Listen to the story over and over again because that's what I was doing. I was trying to tell it in various ways to different people. And the edge of the pain eased off, and my purpose started to become a passion to make a positive impact on the lives of others. And when you are giving of yourself to others, the pain that you felt heals itself. For every person you're able to uplift. And this is why this Live to Uplift tribute to my beautiful friend Sandy cuts right to my soul today. Because this is what our sisterhood was all about.
You've really given this such a pragmatic, layered approach to how. And I really do believe that our listeners are going, and myself included, I absolutely count myself into this, and everybody listening in on this is, you've given such a wonderful, pragmatic, layered approach to how you have not just coped, but thrived with it, not separate from, with it. You took it on head on. You, like you're saying, you have a degree in background in psychology. But there's never the avoidance or being devoid of asking for help, particularly when it's needed. I really do appreciate, Shirley, that you've taken, or you took the onus to try different things, say and share the story to as many people as you needed to approach it from every angle for your mind and peace of mind. Pull it apart, take the edge of that pain off. I love that. Take the edge of it off, not push it aside, etc. completely, but take the edge of it away. I think I particularly appreciate that you didn't shy away from it. You sat with that picture and you realized that the lesson from this is, do spend more time with the people that you love, with your family. For that time is precious. So again, it was the constant learnings of that. I think what really stands out for me in listening to how you approached this was, you had to uplift yourself. It has to come from self. We have our people around us, etc., but it has to come from self to lift up in order to keep lifting up others. And in hearing all of this, and in very much understanding the values and the background and the journey that Mom walked, and very similar, I can absolutely see the similarities and the parallels for the both of you, is, what do you feel has built that depth of strength to be able to pull yourself out? What if you could give a deeper reflection point of self for how and where did that strength develop? How was it nurtured? Because remember, you and Mom come from backgrounds where, technically speaking, your morals, your values, yes, they're built at home, right? With parents that deeply love and care about you. But you've also come from environments that are brutal, where your external circumstances are teaching you and potentially influencing of a very different kind. So where is that sense of character and strength built, and how over time?
When I think about, my journey, and our paths crossing, Sandy and I, there were so many parallels, as you've pointed out. There were so many points of resonance. Um, we viewed the same vistas. We weathered very similar storms. We felt the weight and the responsibility of the work that we were doing in South Africa, that needed profound, and still continues to need profound, transformation. Um, we both understood what it was like to carry the mantle of being top HR professionals in this country. And it was never just about policies and practices. It was about nation building and touching lives, as you said earlier. When you're in a position to touch so many people's lives with your story and with the work that you do every single day, we have a huge responsibility, because we've been given so much. And I think that we had this, legacy of this intricate journey from apartheid to equity and inclusion, and trying to do that with strategic courage, with moral clarity, um, where we are humans because of other humans. And I think there are words to describe that as well. But I think deep down we recognize that we're not just professionals with a bit of capability and competence, but we are stewards of conscience and of of deep change that we want to see, and bring about in the hearts and minds of people. And this goes beyond the rigorous global standards and unflinching commitment to the cause. It goes deep down into the soul of every single person that we touch, because we all have to do the inner work. You cannot be a lousy human being and try to be a good leader. You cannot do that. You have to recognize that you have to be on a personal journey of healing, of reflection, of understanding your overall well being, of understanding where your gaps for development are, for understanding perhaps where you've made mistakes, and for seeking out opportunities to make good on those things where you have perhaps said something wrong or hurt somebody inadvertently. And we often don't think about this, because, these boardrooms can be hard. They are hard on profitability. They're hard on performance, and performance is based on outcome in the short term. It's not based on how you make people feel over the long term. And when I talk about people, I'm not only talking about your employees, I'm talking about your communities, I'm talking about your customers, I'm talking about your stakeholders, your shareholders, um, your family. If you are to be a great human being um, in your leadership practices, then you're a great, parent, you're a great spouse, you are a great community leader. And this is the work I think that we can't talk about in boardrooms because it feels soft and fluffy to talk about. But hey, I have the opportunity to be in there now, and I raise these issues with regularity, because we can't talk about employee experience and customer experience. What does that mean? It it's about understanding yourself as a leader and your impact, your personal impact on other people. Every time you show up, you have an impact on a person. You leave a memory, an experience that somebody either has enjoyed or not, you know. And sometimes we have to have very tough conversations, but if it's framed by respect and humanity and people centricity and honesty and authenticity, it's a very different kind of conversation to, well, I'm the boss and I'm tough and I tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, I mark you down and you can leave. You can go someplace else if you're not happy here, or we'll pay you less. And some of these things can become very, very painful for people. And so the courage to speak our truths, to champion fairness, is not just a compliance issue. It is really about sustaining people's lives and sustaining and building a resilient nation for generations to come. It's not a conversation for us and for now, but it starts with us first, because if we don't immerse ourselves in who we are, what we're about, what drives us, what frames our lives, who are the people that we must be kinder to, who are the people we need to be more generous to, how can we in our own individual ways, be better people every day? That takes constant work. Every single day we've got to do this. And so we have to combine that professional steeliness with personal warmth, and a lot of us forget that because we think people might see our vulnerability, people might see our soft points, people might think that's a weakness. I can tell you now that it is an absolute strength to be able to show up with, with this combination of capability, of being comfortable with your own authenticity, and to, I think that's the secret sauce actually of leadership, is to be comfortable in your own authentic self And your self-actualization then comes out of that. And it's not only about what you achieve personally, it's a that you've opened the door for millions of others to come through and to share the journey um of 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 happiness, of joy of being alive, of getting up in the morning and saying, what is my dream for today? What do I want to achieve? With joy, with love, with energy, with, even if things feel like they are breaking up and falling over around you, it's how do you, and I can tell you my emotions and the way I experience my grief every day goes like this. It's not a straight line. There are some days, Sunil, I can't even speak because of my emotional state. I cannot share the story of Jamie in the way I shared it with you today because I'm just too emotional to speak. And then I need to do the breath work. I need to center myself. I need to understand how I'm feeling. And a lot of us don't like to go to a place where we understand that something is happening to us and that we need to do something to relieve and to open up the energy flows again. And they don't even want to have that kind of conversation because that's just too kind of, to left field. So I love that work, that intentional work that we have to do to be aware of what is happening in ourselves and to be aware of our impact on other people every day. And I think these are the things, our emotions are different every day. We get up with different energies when we get up in the morning, and when we go to bed at night, and we reflect on what went on during the day and who said what to who and why and how you could have done it better. And that's all fine. We're not perfect. We're gonna make mistakes. There're gonna be a few things we could have done better, but we learn from them and we move forward. And this is what I want to encourage everyone who is listening to do, because I know that this is what Sandy would have wanted us to do as well.
You've hit once again multiple aspects of the development of a stronger self, because that's where it starts. It does start with self. And there's such poignant values that came through in what you shared: stewardship, love, authenticity, breathing, take a breath,
Yes.
dig deeper, sit with it, conscious choice. Humans, we are humans, we all have emotions. We all make mistakes or lessons, however you'd like to see them. But what do you do with that afterwards is more of what counts. The point around intention. How do you self regulate? How do you be honest with yourself? Integrity. How do you show up for yourself? That these qualities, these values, how you've answered this question around building a more formidable self, really, when you look at the core of that, is a recipe for how you then give that back to the world around you. That and I loved how you phrased it and you framed it is you've got to be able to find ways to release it in order for a different flow and energy to take over, right? Because it's in the truest sense of the words of hurt people. And I feel even to that understanding of if you can recognize that somebody's hurting, do you take it personally? Does it trigger you in such a way where you react to it versus do I reflect and pause and go, that person is going through something? Am I at a level to meet them where they're at and to just maybe give it extra kindness? And so such a beautiful post this morning on the ability and the capacity within to be able to give that capacity to another. So it really does come back to self. And as two women who authentically, deeply, unapologetically knew and know themselves, to have come from where they come from, through all adversity, women, color, townships, societal, economic, you name it, real things that could bring anybody down or keep you in a space of lack or believing that you are lacking, that you are meant to stay there. You have managed to build formidable senses of selves continuously, constantly, self-check, reflection, to be able to take yourselves to a vision of what you create and design for the lives that you want. And in turn, and I think even deeper to that, for how you create that world around you. Right. Each one bring one. And I think I'd be remiss, Shirley, and I've written this down just because I didn't want to forget it. Um, is that I'm pretty sure along the way you've had to develop a certain voice, your voice, right? And I have no doubt that that's evolved over time and been shaped by various experiences and factors and influences, etc. But how did you develop your voice, and how do you support others to develop theirs?
Thank you so much, Janelle. I think the development of one's voice is another aspect of our leadership that we really have to work on with more intention. There's a lot of work happening around what we call seat at the table, especially for women in decision making drills around executive committees and board tables. And I have been saying over the last few months, especially amplifying the message that you are at the table. So now you use your voice at the table. We are there. In fact, we set the table. We put the table there,
Mm.
and we are firmly there. And now we need to find our voices at that table, because you can't be at the table and not have a voice. And the way to find your voice is through your giving to others, is remembering what your purpose is when you're at the table. And every time you use your voice, you have to ask, was that a purposeful comment that I just made? Was it based on good values? Was it based on respect for other people? Was I listening before I voiced my opinion? Or was I trying to answer a question because I wanted to be smarter and ahead of everyone else around the table? Am I listening as well before I speak? And when I speak, have I thought through clearly what it is that I want to say and what the objective is that I'm trying to achieve? Because sometimes we can be just hollow, noisy gongs. We're not speaking with purpose that's underpinned by um, listening to other people first before you actually respond, and that you respond thoughtfully, and that you respond authentically, and that you come from a place where you might even have done some research before you got into the room, and that when you sat on that chair, you realize how important that chair is, and how that chair is linked to the impact that you will make on other people's lives every time you sit on it. And I think that for me is what it means to have a seat at the table. It means that I must find my voice, and it means that I must amplify certain messages every day to make sure that we build a leadership cadre that cares about not only themselves and their families, but about a very much longer term future that truly is about building a better world for everyone in it. Um, and so the point that you make about um, who lifted me up and how am I lifting others today? For every opportunity I get to sit in a boardroom today, how am I lifting or how am I uplifting others? Or was it just a noisy, troublesome, um, going nowhere voice in the room today? And sometimes it's like that, sometimes in the rough and tumble, it happens. But when we are thoughtful and when we have, taken a deep breath before we actually spoken, and we are mindful about our voices and the impact of those voices in the room and listening before we speak. Um, and we feel also that we need to be coaching and mentoring on this topic as we go, because often we say there are causes for women to get into boardrooms. So do a program, go, get a mentor, do this, do that. But at its very essence, we do not teach on some of these programs the art of listening and thoughtful engagement, thoughtful conversations, deep dialogues, um, that are respectful of everyone in the room, that is inclusive of everyone in the room, that is not only the louder voices that get to be heard, it's the ones that often don't speak, that say the most profound things when they do. And are we listening for those? And an example would be, I go back to what the teachers said to me when I was in matric. They said to me, they started off by saying, you're not the brightest pea in the pod. I was kind of like, sure, I'm working so hard. Yeah, I'm not getting straight A's, but I could have just focused on that. And then I wouldn't have heard that they think that I have potential to do so much more. And that sentence changed the trajectory of my life forever. And I'm so grateful to them. And I'm so grateful that I was able to hear that second piece of the sentence because, sometimes we get stuck on the first part. And for 10 years later, we're angry about that first part. It's all we're focusing on. That somebody wanted to take you down, somebody wanted to say something bad about you, somebody wanted to undermine you in some way and embarrass and humiliate you in some way. But then you didn't hear the positive, actual thing that they're trying to tell you because you're too stuck there. And so I just want to encourage because that's the art of listening. And there's probably a science to listening as well. Um, because we hear things, but we're not listening. And we must listen to find those nuggets of inspiration that come from people in situations where you least expect it to come. Sometimes people will say something in a conference. There are hundreds of people in a conference, but there's somebody there, not even, on the panels or guest speaker. Sometimes it's somebody else that says just that one little sentence to you. And it's profound. It shifts one. People come back 10 years later and they say, I'll never forget what you said that day. And this is what I went and did about it. And those are when you feel, wow, I've touched one soul. I've touched one life. And I feel like my purpose on this earth has been actualized and has been lived. And then whatever happens to me after this, I'm grateful for having had this life. And this live to lift up is so profound because that's exactly how Sandy and I would have navigated our lives, together. And I feel that some way today she's listening to us. And I hope through listening to this that the listeners will be inspired and feel uplifted um, because of this dialogue here today. And there are some little snippets that they can take away and say, these were the teachings. This is what I've learned. And this is what I'm going to do differently to live my life with impact and to make a difference to anyone that I might touch on any given day.
Gratitude profoundly in the question that stemmed from a voice and to how you create this. I loved how you've framed this. It's thought provoking. It is intentional. You never know where those pearls of wisdom are going to be taken from. And I agree with you. I tend to agree with you. There must be a science behind not even just listening, but hearing, because there is a difference between listening and hearing. And there's something that's really, and this is I think one of the last points I want to raise with you before I wrap up with you, Shirley, because we could go on and on and on, I feel. But you have touched on something that is so fundamental, and I had to giggle because you said somebody would have said something 10 years ago and you're still holding on to it. You're still angry about it. That is what you've taken from it. But you gave the example of your teachers, which were your catalyst, one of your breaking moments, right? To send you off on this trajectory, on this path, where you listened or you heard potential from you might not be great academically, right? But what you heard, what you took from it, was optimistic, and you took it for a positive. You put a different spin on it, which speaks to a certain mindset that you have. Because the mindset is where we operate from, how we receive, what we choose to take from it. And if I consider the mindsets of yourself and of mom, that's what stands out for me as a cut above many, is what you choose to take from things. How would you share with our listeners the development of an abundant mindset? How is that built, leaned into, and developed and nurtured? What would you say would be the secret sauce or the recipe for that?
Thank you so much, Danielle. I think that's such a profound point. I'm finding myself nowadays when I wish people happy birthday, for example, I wish them many more years of abundance. And it just when you said the word, I, I, I want to be able to say there's the gift of abundance that if we make the right choices, we can, and we have the right mindset, we can reach out and enjoy that abundance. And it's this abundance that just keeps on giving. It's unbelievable when you open up your mind and your soul to the realm of what is possible for you. Somehow the universe is there to make sure that, this abundance comes. And even when we have, kind of paucity moments, when we have moments of, I don't have anything to give. I am, I don't know what to say. I am, lost for words. If you understand that moment, somehow you understand that in that very moment of scarcity, you have huge opportunity for abundance. And you have to shift from this scarcity mode I don't have, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm uncertain, to if I was in an abundant mode mindset, what would I be thinking? And what would I be doing? Because it's not magical. You actually have to do something different, because you can't have an abundance mindset and then say, well, it's somehow magically going to come my way by some miracle. You know, I have to work towards achieving that abundance that is set out for me so that I can embrace it. If I stay this side, I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss that. If I stay angry forever, if I stay um, in the scarcity that says I haven't got or can't do or will never be able to, then you're never going to be able to cross the line to saying, um, I'm going to give it a try. You know, there are people who believe in me here, and I'm taking a bit of a risk, just like I did when I went to Harvard. I was terrified because I thought, what am I thinking? What am I going to tell people when I come back and I might have failed? How hugely embarrassing will that be? What will people think of me? So I went to Harvard and I worked really, really hard to try and not come back and say I failed. And look, and if even if we do fail, even if we do, take, take the journey across the line from scarcity to abundance, and we try, we put our toe into it, and we pull back because we afraid of how tough that journey is going to be. It's fine. You take the lesson and you try again. You can go back and you can do that. There are case studies of great leaders in this world that we might respect. There are stories of poor leaders in this world that we need to also take lessons from, to say, what happened to this person? You know, why did it end up for them the way it did? We have spectacular experiences here right in our own country of what is great leadership and what is poor leadership. How does it look like, and what is the impact on people when they don't see the opportunity for abundance and they put into place terrible practices and behaviors that are in line with their scarcity mindset? Um, and so I want to encourage our leaders today, as I think and reflect on Sandy, my fellow traveler in this world, my fellow adventurer, a person who believed in me, and this rewarding path that we were on, not just financially and materially, but, soulful journey that we have been on. Um, your footprint, Sandy, and your spirit is permanently with us. Your messages, your learnings, your love is always with us. And that calls upon me to be abundant, to serve with excellence, to serve with grace, and to serve with an unwavering heart. And what a privilege it was walking this journey alongside of you. I'm deeply grateful, my dearest friend.
Dr. Shirley Zinn, um, you have shared from the depths of your soul, your heart, your mind, your experience, the raw authenticity of how you have captured not just your own journey, but that walking alongside Sandy Mahanathan's. And it has been heartfelt. It has been thought provoking. It has been a coaching session on a different level. Shirley, I wish you everything of continued success to keep impacting and following and owning your purpose, because the world needs so much more of what you are giving of yourself. So may you be abundantly blessed always. Thank you for your time. I thank you for giving and sharing with all of us so freely. It resonates, it is supportive, and I'm extremely enlightened and eager for this episode to go live because I have no doubt to the core of my being what this will support so many with, particularly those that are struggling to come to terms with the reality of where we are. But something that I'd like to circle back on before I wrap up is to give gratitude for the experience and the lives of a Jamie and Sandy Mahanathan that were here for the time that they were, that we are privileged and so deeply humbled and grateful to have experienced as we have. So thank you for that key reminder. Thank you again for your time. And to everybody that takes the time to listen in, to subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, to follow the content across Mom's social media channels. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that you do, for your responses and your feedback and the encouragement for what this supports each of you with. You are all living embodied examples of lift up if you so choose to. So thank you everybody for joining in and sharing. And I ask again, who is lifting you up today and how are you choosing to lift others around you? And with that, thank you everyone. Take care. God bless. Stay humble.